The Pies Nation podcast is proudly brought to you by Swish, who are joining us for season 2025. They connect fans with their favourite sports stars via personalised video messages, and with hundreds of the biggest footy stars, both past and present, available, fans can surprise a friend or a loved one with an authentic personalised video from their sporting heroes for birthdays, celebrations, or just for the sake of it. And I think that's the case for Nick Dacos because, boys, he's already sold out on Swish. Such is the popularity of the man, he's already the most popular person.
So could I get a Peter Dacos Swish there, Nico?
I think he might just have to relay all of his requests over to Peter.
Or a Josh?
Or a Josh.
We may have to go to the next best, Scotty P. Is he available, Nico?
Definitely, and he's one of many who are available if you want to get your Collingwood fix for Swish, because for all our listeners and viewers, 10% off if you use the code PiesNation. So don't waste any time. Be sure to find all your club favourites and get the personalised video of your favourite sports star thanks to Swish, who are sponsoring our podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Nicholas Sacco here, your host for another episode. This is episode 4 of season 7, or episode 177 if you are counting from the beginning. The undermanned yet motivated Bulldogs came out snarling on Friday night, but the Pies were able to hold firm and remain on the winners list with a narrow 6-point victory at the MCG to move to 2-1 approaching the bye. We dissect the big talking points that come out from the win against Footscray, and we celebrate the impact of our two seasoned stars on AskPiesNation. Plus, the VFL report returns with Marcus and Serge, and we speak to our next guest, the crowd competition winner. And it is the original trio that I've got in the studio with me for tonight's ep. It's Marcus Callahan, it's Luke Humphries. Boys, bit of a relief after that one. We certainly made it hard, but at the end of the night, the 4 points were ours.
Yes, Nico, Lukey, good to be with you for this review. I think it was some errant goal kicking, unfortunately, and some extra spice from the Dogs, Lukey, that made this one a very close and very good viewing encounter.
Yeah, and I touched on it in the last couple of weeks. It feels like as soon as one player misses, they all start missing and the pressure just begins to mount, and that is exactly what happened the other night, Nico and Marcus. Very frustrating, but glad we got away with the 4 points in the end.
We'll get to the part at quarter in a moment, but we mentioned it in our Thursday preview, Marcus. We knew that the Bulldogs were going to come out with a bit of a motivation on the back of this being their milestone encounter, 100 years in the VFL, AFL, but I must say, personally, I was pretty surprised with how gallant they were from start to finish, considering the amount of stars they didn't have on the park.
No doubt. It was a key talking point, and I think we both had margins or predicted margins that were a bit more than the end result. But full credit to them for the way they came out and they toiled and they didn't care who was on the park. It was about playing for the jumper. Biggest home and away crowd I believe they've ever played in front of by a long way, Lukey. So the extra motivation must have been there.
Yeah, and they held up really well at times where I thought we were going to break the game open at times. And I was with Jacko watching the game, and I said to him early on, there was a point where I said, this feels a bit similar to the Port game last week where they kind of stuck with us for a bit and then we were able to just pull away. And, well, I was wrong because they stuck on well and truly right to the end and almost stole it from us. So credit to them. They're going to be a scary side, I think, this year once they get a few of their stars back in. Yeah,
absolutely. They're proving all the pundits wrong already, despite just being 1-1. All right, let's start with the pie that caught your eye. I think a few to choose from, again, from Friday night's encounter, but Marcus, we'll start with you.
Start with me. No worries. Pie that caught my eye this week was Josh Dacos. Fellas, I thought this was the best game I've seen for him defending, but still looking to be attacking. And it's a real interesting one to watch how the game styles of teams that look like they're more competitive early in the season. It's all about that rebound, slingshot. Can you turn the ball over and go quick, which really is the Collingwood game style from sort of 2022 onwards. So I would consider. First couple of weeks, I wasn't sure about Josh's performances. He was looking okay, but this week he just seemed to find the corridor really well and he knew when to come off his direct opponent. So I was really pleased with his game. Still a little unsure about where he best fits, but with performances like that, I'll be happy to see him play more games of footy at halfback. So that was a pie that caught my eye this week.
Certainly did improve as the game went on, I felt. I still thought it was a bit shaky at the start, and hopefully his defensive traits continue to improve as the season
You weren't
goes on.
so happy. I
wasn't.
In the WhatsApp.
I wasn't. I thought that he just defensively just didn't stack up. But at the same time, we were under an immense amount of pressure from the Dogs at that stage of the game. So he was one that I felt was able to really have an impact in that last quarter.
I missed that in the chat. Were you going off at Josh?
I just thought that defensively, and Jack had said some comments about him earlier in the season that I was starting to trend towards, that I just didn't feel like he had what it took to be a halfback flanker. Yes, the attacking side is fantastic, and we've seen that happen many times, not just this year, but even when he was playing on the wing in recent years. I just didn't feel like defensively he had it in him, but as I was proven as the game went on, he started to show a bit more of that. Still not naturally, but I'm sure that will come with time.
Yeah, again, I'm still got question marks over his actual defensive skills, but I just felt like in the third quarter we just started winning some one-on-one contests, and that was off the back of him being willing to go corridor and then linking up with some of those familiar names to really put together some amazing transfers, and it's a shame that some of those didn't capitalise in goals at the other end. But he's a watch, and I think if he can continue to complement Dan Houston and Isaac Quaynor, then that half-back line looks pretty formidable.
Definitely.
Pie that caught your eye, Lukey.
I'm going to go with our skipper. Now, a bit of a mixed bag, Darcy Moore.
Okay.
Was dominated early from Sam Darcy, and we thought Sam's about to kick, 8, 10 goals here. But I thought Moore recovered quite well, particularly in the second half, just getting a bit more body on, a bit more, aerial contest as well, getting his fist to the ball and just able to quell Darcy to an extent, because at one point it felt like Darcy was really going to get a run on early in the game. So I thought Darcy Moore recovered quite well. He's had a tough, on-field for probably 12 months, a tough period on field, not just as skipper, but in his own role, and, people questioning his role within the side. And I know you got guys like Kane Corn saying he wouldn't get a game at Hawthorn and all this kind of rubbish. So I thought he recovered quite well, and a symptom of losing Murphy, struggling to find that form he did have in 2023. But just thought he recovered quite well in the second half, and I wanted to give him a little shout out for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and we'll chat on the impact of Reef's injury a little bit later on in the episode as well.
And plus losing Reef early on.
Absolutely, yeah, because Nathan Buckley made an important comment post-match. I felt that at half-time he definitely needed to adjust because of, I guess, the lack of personnel, but also the fact that Sam Darcy was pretty much taking control of the game, and that the Bulldogs were pretty much looking for him with every inside 50 entry. So he, as you said, decided to put a bit more body on him rather than fly for every single contest, and had to stay grounded probably when naturally he would just give himself a few metres and try and fly for the contest. And I think by him doing that, yes, Darcy was still able to take a couple of more marks, but it injected Jeremy Howe into the game and allowed him to have a bit more of an influence. And by the end of the match, I thought Jeremy Howe was one of our most dominant players throughout the night. And I think that was because Darcy stayed down and allowed that third man to come in and have a bit more of a contest with Darcy having to face two of our defenders rather than one. So I think for Moore to sacrifice his own game a little bit was a true testament to why he is the skipper of the side, both on and off field. So was very impressed with Darcy on that front, as I was with Lachie Schulz. And I think there was a lot spoken about him coming into this season. I know we put the onus on him a little bit about wanting to perform after a bit of a down year in his first year in black and white, but I've heard a lot of comments saying that this was probably his best game in the black and white, and I probably couldn't agree more, because looking at the stats first and foremost, seeing that he was able to hit the scoreboard with 2 goals and have 17 touches and be our second highest tackle producer with 7 marks, 6 score involvements. But there's little moments in games that really show where players are at, and we've seen previously Lachie have moments of doubt, and that's caused him to put his head down and not have that confidence to go on with the job. And I think there was an instance late in the last quarter where Lachie Schulz dropped the mark inside 50 that he misjudged. He just ran over the top and the ball went out of bounds instead of Schulz taking a simple mark, taking some more time off the clock and allowing us to have a shot. And I feel like recently or in previous games that would have affected him quite a bit, but we could see as the match went on how much confidence he was producing. And I think by the end of the game, he wasn't going to let a moment like that get him by. And as proven, when McStay went into the corridor at half back and my hands were in my face because I couldn't believe that McStay was attempting such a kick in the position we were in. But for Schulz to know that there were two bodies that were going to sandwich him and still take the mark and just really give that relief to all our Collingwood supporters that were there that night, I think was just a true showing of that confidence that he's been able to build, and why he was so influential in the night is because of those little moments. So I'm very impressed with Lockie and what he was able to do for us on Friday.
Do we feel that he's carving out his role finally? I mean, it took time for him to settle in, and we've all commented on that probably taking longer than we would have liked. But Lukey, do you feel like he's starting to insert himself into the forward line? Like, this is what I do, not just what I've been asked to do, but here are the runs on the board.
Yeah, and I feel like slowly from the second half of last season it was beginning. I think just the injuries that cooled our forward line last year probably hurt him a lot, and the pressure of him coming in and the fact we were losing. I still think by midway through last year, he was playing similar games, just not hitting the scoreboard as much as we probably would have liked. And when he had the opportunity to kick a big set shot, he was, missing. I think he had a set shot in this game where I was with Jack and I said to him, this is the one that he needs to start kicking, because it was at a point in the game where I think we would have went a couple goals up, and it was just one of those moments where we just got to go back and kick this. Went back and kicked it, and I was like, this is what we want to see. And when he gets the opportunity, when he's 30, 40 metres out, he just needs to go back and drill them. And it was nice to see he got his little, showboat kind of moment as well with his candy in the goal square. And I think that just exemplified the confidence that he is building on the park now, is he's willing to do those type of things and go on with the job.
What I think needs to be made aware as well for us Collingwood supporters is that as great as that was to see from Lockie Schulz, and as much as we would like that to be the standard performance we get from him week on week, it's not going to happen. And I think that needs to be realised before we move on to the remainder of our season, because should he have a lesser game but still having somewhat of an influence, we don't want to see those comments come back to the fore where supporters start questioning his impact on this side, because, as you said, Marcus, he's got a role to play in this team. It's not always going to show up on paper, but what I'm just so happy about on Friday is that he got reward for effort.
Exactly.
Because that effort has been building and building over the last fortnight, and to see it come to fruition with both goals on the board, but also the efforts that he had around the ground, I think was exceptional.
I think one thing we can never question is his pressure and intent, defensive, tackling inside that forward 50, which is what a couple of our other forwards aren't always necessarily doing. So, and they don't cop the heat that he has copped. So, as long as he's popping up for a goal or two, I think what the other stuff that he does off the ball particularly is what makes him so important to this forward line. We've got Bobby and Billy and these other forwards to Goey in there as well when he goes in to kick all the flashy goals. But if Shooter can continue doing what he does and be able to pop up for a couple goals, he's going to be very influential to this side.
Yeah, he certainly will. We're looking forward to seeing a lot more of that from Lockie Schulz. Looking at the game in a bit more detail, a few more plays we would love to highlight. And it starts with the Milestone men, of course, with Scott Pendlebury and Steele's side bottom. We knew that they were going to be breaking the record of games played with one another coming into this Friday night clash. And I guess that was a bit of a side story to what was taking place with Footscray and their celebrations. Of course, we can't be remiss of that. But to not only see them celebrate this milestone together, but to actually see them turn back the clock once again and have the last quarters that they both did was incredible. And I want to touch and I want to highlight specifically Steele side bottom first, because yes, he had 22 disposals, 2 goals, 6 score involvements and 6 tackles, and 6 clearances, but he had 12 touches in the final term. And I reckon 6 of those came in the last 5 minutes when the game was on the line. We talk about little moments again. We saw it with Schulz. We saw it as well with Steele Sidebottom. Dropping that mark, flinching a little bit in the middle of the ground, turnover, Bulldogs go and kick a goal. He doesn't shy away from it. He stays into the contest. He remains in those centre bounce attendances. He remains in stoppages. And what do you know? A couple of minutes later, he kicks the winning goal for us in the forward line. And I think it was just as classy and as professional of a 5-minute period that I've seen from Steele Sidebottom. We know he's capable on it. And ended up being the highest rated player on the ground in the second half. I think that just says so much about what he does bring into this team. And the fans will have their say about that a little bit later on with AskPiesNation, but I just really wanted to highlight the incredible impact that Steele had on this team on Friday night.
Yeah, look, the story goes on, doesn't it? To see so many milestones between Steele and Pendles over the journey, but this was just like the footy gods are talking once again, and it could have gone the other way, as you mentioned, with the Dogs and their celebrations, but just so happy that we got to see another piece of Collingwood history, really. Just the 22 disposals and 2 goals for number 22 as well. I mean, it's just there's poetry to it in a way, and I think Steele just having the experience and the mindset. Like, to me, that last quarter really did feel like a final in many ways. And once again, we saw how experience is crucial for managing those moments where it really was the flip of a coin. Like, full credit to the Dogs for the way they kept coming. So for Steele to step up and be inserting himself into the game, like right at the coalface, and just having amazing touch, poise, time, space, it was incredible, Nico. So, I mean, this guy has obviously gone through a bit of a lull in the twilight of his career, but this season seems to be a bit different, Lukey. There's something in the air.
And we spoke about vintage Sidebottom last week, which again, we probably got another vintage performance from Sidey this week. But Pendlebury, this was vintage Pendlebury as well. Some of his movement with the footy, slowing play down, the little hold and the handball over the top, and just little magical moments that we've seen across his whole career, teaming up with Nick Dacos for a lot of the night. There was some, like you mentioned just before we started, some beautiful passages through the middle of the ground between them two. And you kind of sit there and go, you really just want to savour it and enjoy it, because we know Pendles is obviously coming close to the end of his career, and we're just like sitting there so grateful that we get to watch both of these. Nick Dacos, the young superstar, with Pendles, who's our childhood hero, and we've been able to watch him across his whole career, as well as still Sidebottom. So really just getting to savour these moments and enjoy it, and it was great that we were able to win, and they get to do the jumper swap afterwards, which doesn't get done too often in the AFL, so really special to see that.
Yeah, I think Pendles struggled to get his on a bit more than Steele did, and just touching on Nick Dacos there as well. I just saw a moment after the game in the post-match footage where Nick Dacos actually went and got a photo with Steele and with Steele and Pendles, almost as if he was a fan once more.
Yeah.
Just touching on your point there, Lukey, about how special it is to be watching these guys still go well at the end of their careers. Like, we've got good veterans, and I think that's a really important component of our list at the moment, Nico.
Certainly do. Passing on the baton, I think, if they
that.
weren't already. I think not next game, but the game after, Pendles is going to equal Sean Burgoyne in terms of games played. So he's just continuing to break milestones with every week that comes. Looking at the side in a bit more of a team sense, the pressure pies continued, I felt, throughout the night. We ended up with 64 tackles, 12 of those occurring inside 50s. Yes, our ball movement was terrific at times as well, but I think we need to touch on why this was such a pivotal part of our win, because it was. And the reality is that we don't bring that pressure from the start. The Bulldogs are able to run away and get this victory regardless of the abhorrent set shots, which we'll talk on as well. But I think it was pleasing to see, Marcus, that this pressure continued on from the Port Adelaide game, and we didn't really have too much of a lapse, apart from maybe the first 15 minutes of the game when we were down 22-0.
Absolutely, and look, we can almost say it's the crown jewel in the Collingwood formula for winning: tackle, pressure. It leads to more turnovers for the opposition. It means we keep the ball in our front half for longer, and it creates opportunities. And I think what impressed me, having to watch the game from home, was that even though we weren't really on top through the first 10 minutes in particular, but then really it took us probably until the third to really have some ascendancy on the game, we had more players in the frame. And I always love using that as an indicator of how good our pressure and intent is. Yes, you can get the pressure factor or however they calculate that, and that's nice to see when we're going well, but just getting numbers to the footy, and where there was 2 Dogs players, there were 4 Collingwood players, and we're just working up and down the ground beautifully. So I'm not sure how it looked at the game, Lukey, but did you get that sense that we were having numbers around the footy?
Yeah, and it was the difference, I guess, from the Port Adelaide game was they brought us nothing, I guess, in return. But the Dogs' return served quite well, and like I touched on earlier, it was great to see how the Dogs could hit back at us, but it was also great for us to see how we could hit back when the pressure is hot, and the ball isn't easy to win, and ball movement. And I know we crumbled at times under a bit of pressure with moving the footy, not like the week before, but in terms of in tight and keeping that ball in tight and being able to extract it and win it, I thought we handled that really well against a Dog side who is very good in the clinches, and felt like they were getting on top at times in the game, but I thought it was good to see how we would respond. And like you touched on it, like I didn't really think about it, but it did kind of feel like a final, particularly in that second half. Obviously, a lot at stake with the Dogs, celebrations and our celebrations as well. So home and away game, but good to see a bit of a finals-like atmosphere early on and us able to stand up to it.
Yeah, you were right. The Dogs were really impressive in those contested situations. That's why I felt like they were always kicking it down the line, constantly trying to devoid us of getting any space, because once we did get space on the transition, we were very hard to stop. We kicked 5 of our 10 goals from defensive turnovers, and I think a lot of that was because of the fact we were able to generate space. The prime example, of course, being the fact that we were able to get Mason Cox delivering the most beautiful goal assist to Bobby Hill, who kicked it right in front of him like he had played 400 games. Mason was just able to lace it out to Bobby. He was able to run through the open goal. But that's where we're most dangerous, when we have that space afforded to us.
And I'm glad you've brought that up, because to me, in the first 10 minutes, obviously we got jumped and we weren't really controlling the game. But I don't know what the message was at quarter time, but from that point onwards, I saw us looking inside and trying to switch and create new angles for inside 50 pretty much for the rest of the game. And that's so pleasing as a supporter when we know it's not working with not necessarily the long kick down the line, but there was a clear directive to me to get guys like Bobby Hill in space, because the effects that guy has on our team. Yes, he only has 8 disposals, but the 2 goals, electric, and then the chase down tackle on Oscar Baker late in the game. Those little moments when we switch the ball and put Bobby in space. I know the tackle wasn't, but those are the types of opportunities to really lift the crowd and bring them into the game and get one of our X Factor players to lift the rest of the forward line and potentially the rest of the team. So again, don't know how it looked at the game, but I thought we were getting better looks when we switched the ball and looked for the corridor. And
I think that may have been the difference between winning and losing, because we were opening up the angles and we were able to extract or use the entire width of the MCG, whereas the Bulldogs, yes, they were terrific again in those stoppages, but
where's Darcy? Yeah.
Well, pretty much.
Yeah, and that was kind of their one point of attack, and it felt like we, throughout that last quarter, were really trying to win the game, and it felt like the Dogs were almost trying to hold on and stick with us. And even when we had that 6-point lead at the end for those last few minutes, it was like, it still felt like we were still trying to score and they weren't quite not sure how to advance the ball forward other than finding Darcy long down the line.
Dan McStay was definitely still trying to sque with that shooter one that we mentioned before. I could not believe he hit that 45 kick inside with the 30 seconds to go. That must come up in the review, surely.
Well, we also won 7 of the last 8 clearances of the game. So that speaks to your point, Lukey, about us trying to actually still attack, despite the fact we had the lead in those dying moments.
I think maybe Steele won probably 5 of those, honestly. He was first hands at the footy, incredible scenes.
And I thought about how we have often been in the position of coming from behind in these close games. This was a bit different. I know we came from behind early, but we were in front for a lot of that second half. And it was us in front at the end having to work out how to win this game from being in front. And I thought we actually really controlled things pretty well in that last few minutes to prevent them from moving the ball easily to get a score at the end. And I know we're all holding on for dear life when it was 6 points and they had the ball with 30 seconds to go. But it kind of felt like we'd set up pretty well across defensively for those last few minutes that it was going to be pretty hard for them to get a score.
So despite all of that, we might not even be talking about this if we had have converted our set shots. Those 3 in a row that happened in the final quarter, that would have branched it out to beyond 5 goals and the game's done and dusted. Were you a bit surprised by how simple those shots weren't going our way? But some of those players having those set shots, Jamie Alley particularly one, you would trust
Geordie.
Every day of the week. Jordan De Goey, another one as well. What went wrong in that department?
Oh, look, I don't know what it is. It's a mysterious aspect of football. When a team starts well and converts on set shots, we saw it as recently as last week, I think it has an infectious, shift on the rest of the team, and didn't happen this week. And then it just became harder and harder to put them through.
Well, we go from the Richmond practice game where we kicked dead eye,
20,
then to the Giants where we kicked awful, then to the Power where we kicked, dead eye again, and then this week where we get away with it in the end. But even though, despite everyone, saying the umpires won us the game and blah, 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 we actually, I felt like, deserved a 5 to 6 goal win with how we had played. And we just stuffed up a few of those opportunities. And one of them, again, was that I think when McStay got touched in the last quarter, we all jumped up like, yes, we've won the game here. And then they go the score review and you're like, what are the odds of this? And that was after we had just missed those, few. So it was just like, we're just keeping them in it. And I was sitting there like, we're about to lose this game by 1 point with a goal in the last 20 seconds.
Got to touch on Nick Dacos. Just a casual 39 disposals for him, 14 contested, 11 score involvements, 9 clearances, 8 inside 50s, 540 metres gained. He had 13 touches in the final term. It was him and Steele really willing us towards that victory. I mean, again, we talk about his drive, his want to get to every contest, to get the 1-2s. He wanted to get involved in every opportunity. He delivered again in spades. I think the 8 or 9 coaches' votes he ended up getting as well this afternoon for his performance. And, well, this is what happens when an opposition doesn't bother to put any attention to him, Marcus, because he was just playing with his own footy.
It was very nice as well as a spectator to see him not having to worry about someone hanging off his arm for the entire match. But yeah, another classic Nick performance. And I reckon Nick alongside probably Jeremy Howe, I just felt like they wanted to win so bad for Steele and Pendles. Like, I'm sure every player was acutely aware of that. But for me, those two really stepped up late in the game and managed to help get us a famous Collingwood victory. So I hope that this is the first game of the year where Nick polls.
Surely.
Probably a 3-voter between him and Libba. But yeah, great for him to really get his season going.
And I think what makes Nick great is as the game gets more on the line and more crucial, the moments, he steps up.
He wants it more.
And wants it
He
more.
really relishes it, doesn't it?
He does. And like you said, he's running harder and like the Port game, he's probably in cruise control, just we're up by 70, 80 points, who cares? But when it's a close game and, it's as tough as anything, he wants it more than anyone out there. And as this game went on, he just got better and better. And it felt like for the first time this season we saw prime Nick Dacos, which we've gotten used to over the past couple of years.
Now, probably the biggest sour note to come out of Friday night's clash was the injury to Reef McInnes in the first quarter, which was a suspected ACL injury from the moment that he went off the ground, and it ended up being the case only 24 hours later. So it is really unfortunate because we were starting to see Reef hold his own in that position, albeit a small sample size, Marcus, and we had touched on it throughout recent episodes of the pod this year, but it's a brutal blow for someone that's been working so hard to get his spot in this 23, and it's now a big 12-month recovery for him, and we wish him all the best as well.
Yeah, look, it's just horrific for any player in the AFL or any athlete really to have to undergo an ACL. It's one of the most, treacherous injuries you could have.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah, Nico, actively in recovery. I'm just shattered for him, honestly. A guy who's had, I think, limited opportunity at the elite level. And yes, we've had a very strong list. He's Fly in the press has said Reef is still a part of our future. And I want to believe that. I believe he's out of contract.
Yes, this was his last year of the
deal.
He's
got the ACL, 20-something games in 4 years. I mean, I look at that on paper and having spectated footy for a long time and think that's not helping a player get another contract. But Fly has come out emphatically and said that Reef is part of our future. So you have to hope that the young man does have another opportunity in front of him with a new contract. It's just very hard to conceptualize how that looks when it's unlikely we'll see him again this season unless he does a mixed day and makes it back for finals, as we saw in recent years. I'm just not sure how he fits in long term with this much time on the sidelines when they'd prepared this sort of backstop role where he's sitting behind Darcy Moore. I'm just shattered for him, Lukey.
Yeah,
honestly.
It's just awful timing because, like you said, it feels like he was almost at a crossroads in his career and he had started this season well, new position and settling in, but it wasn't like his spot was guaranteed week to week as well. We were almost talking like if he has a couple bad games, his spot's on the line again. So disappointing that this has happened. It's awful timing for him and hopefully, he gets another go at it next year. But yeah, it's just bad timing for him, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we'll touch on the VFL report a little later on, Marcus. And this, unfortunately for his sake, gives opportunity now for others to step in and try and get ahead of him by the end of the season.
Yeah, we'll save it for the report, but I reckon there was a few key tall defenders who might have just been trying that little bit harder over the weekend, Nico, off the back of the unfortunate news to Reef. So he even gave us his time before he was drafted on this podcast. So nothing but love to Reef and wishing him all the best.
Absolutely. Speaking of returns, I guess in a sense, Jordan De Goey and Mason Cox were back in this side on Friday night. Probably weren't in your top 5 or 6 from the evening, but had their moments throughout the match. I want to get your thoughts, boys, on how we saw their return to the side and what that looks like in the short to medium term.
Yeah, I'll start with Geordie. He did a couple of interviews after the game and he didn't do any practice matches, no VFL, no nothing, just came straight back into the ones, which is very Jordan De Goey. I don't reckon he played VFL, even if the coaches told him he was, quite frankly. And we love that about him. But he was rusty, and he'll be the first to probably say that. And the 3 scoring shots on goal probably played more forward than midfield for me. I don't know what his splits were.
Well, we mentioned on Thursday that might be the case.
Yeah, I thought he might play a bit more midfield minutes, but look, he was running forward. He wasn't really defending. He probably just doesn't have the conditioning quite yet. So it's good to see him play a bit more in the forward line. I just think he just gives us that extra bit of like, okay, this is the full Collingwood side. I know he was wasteful in front of goals, Lukey, but I reckon he's set for an absolutely huge game against the Blues.
Yeah, he's just going to take a little bit to get going to Goey, and it did feel like he was quite rusty out there. And if he just nailed one of those goals, it might have lifted him a bit more. And we did touch on me and Jack about De Goey, and defensively he was a bit poor, but first game back, you don't want to slag on him too hard. He might have been struggling a little out there, but I think that's one thing he does really need to work on is his defensive running. And
on Mason, copped an absolute flush one from Rory Lobb in that final turn. I couldn't believe that wasn't 50 metres, by the way. We'll get to that.
And a suspension at minimum 1 week, sure.
Didn't like the comments that came out of that as well. I think they were pretty disgusting from all those that were happy to see him get hit like that. Whether you like him or not, on and off field, I thought that was very poor. So I think we need to pull our heads in there. But purely on field and before that incident, Marcus, up and down moments I felt, struggled. But again, first game back, I'm happy to let him off on this occasion.
Yeah, I think similar story to Geordie. Tried his best to work his way into the game, as is the way with Mason. Had some moments, and one was obviously very unfortunate for him. I was just like, it's kind of incredible that he didn't get knocked out, if you think about it. Like, I don't know what the wash-up was with his injury, if he's got a fractured cheekbone or something. Like, the glasses seem to have cut him when he landed or something. But he could have been knocked out.
Yep.
Like, that spoil or attempted spoil from Lobb, a few more centimetres to the right, and it could have hit him in the temple. Which could have had a very different outcome. So I think they commented on that on one of the broadcasts that's really touch and go. Like, if he's knocked out from that, Lobb's probably looking at 3 weeks, but because he gets up from the incident, he escapes any sort of sanction.
It's not right that it's outcome based.
Doesn't make sense to me.
That's what he's attempted to spoil, so they've got him off on that, but you attempt to tackle and you're getting done for weeks.
And they're both football acts.
And this I would consider to look worse visually for anyone watching the game compared to a tackle, where you're like, that's our game, is a tackle. Unfortunate that you get one that goes a little too hard and they slam their head into the ground, but this is what you kind of don't want to see happening to players. Is Mason, and obviously he's had his eye issues, and that was my first concern, was because he's touched on it. I think he might have touched on it with us here on the pod, or at least he's touched on it externally, about one more hit to the eye and he may lose his vision. So that was my first worry, was when he was running off. I'm like thinking, shit, like, is this going to be the end for Mason? So glad that he seems A-OK. I thought his game was pretty good as well. Again, he has a couple where you think he should mark that, and then he come out and took a couple of good marks. So I loved his obviously over the top to Bobby, and then that last moment, was it the one at the end of the second quarter when we missed? When he socketed off the ground and it ended up getting out the back, and it was at the McStay.
That was the one that went to McStay.
And he stuffed up. So I thought that was just really smart from Cox. He just threw a leg out and it ended up. We just had to get it out at that point, and we should have finished off after that. But he just has those little point of difference moments in a game that you said about De Goey being the full, complete Collingwood performance. Well, I feel like Mace brings a bit of that complete Collingwood performance as well.
Did you want to touch on McStay before we get to our votes, Marcus? Because we felt like there was certainly some opportunities for him to have a bigger impact on this game.
He's just such a crucial part of our big timber and the structure that provides. Coxie coming into the team, McStay had less opportunity in the ruck, but I still thought he got around the ground pretty well. and made it to a number of contests, particularly on the wing, where he's able to halve it, and in some cases actually mark the ball. So if he just converts one or two more of those goals, I think he has an even better performance. Obviously, there was a lot going on above the shoulders with some of those errors, and it's unfortunate that we missed scoring opportunities because of it. But is there a world where we can play Cox, Cameron, and the Triple M's? Like, is that too tall?
The quadruple M's.
Quadruple M's. Is there a world?
I don't see it. And I think if we're going to potentially be bringing Billy Frampton back into the frame, well, that's a good 5-6 very key position players all around the ground. I don't see room for all of them, particularly with our style of play. Not for me.
We're very blessed with them at the moment.
Yes.
So
After this time last year, we couldn't buy a ruckman.
It's a good position to be in. And as soon as we start thinking, we've got too many of them, a couple of them will drop off and we'll end up needing all of them. So
Yeah, but you can't play all of them, Lukey. I don't think you can.
Yeah.
You can't or you can?
No, you can't.
No. So if Checkers is obviously fit, I would assume for Carlton, is it just a straight swap back out?
It might have to be.
Yeah.
Well, depending on the extent of what Cox's injury is, because we haven't heard just yet. But as you said, he does seem okay, which is good. But it seems like that might be the way to go.
And I know we haven't touched on the other Triple M, Tim Membry. He was a bit down, I guess, based on his previous week. I feel like there's a few times where his effort could have been a bit higher, and as soon as he couldn't quite get into the game, he kind of was completely out of it for the whole way. So going forward, I don't really want to see too many performances like that from him, because I feel like he can be so important and impactful to this side, but as soon as things weren't quite going his way, he completely couldn't make an impact at all.
A bit more consistency certainly would be nice, I think, from the skunk. All right, let's get to our votes then. I reckon we've all got very similar players, but the order will certainly be interesting. Marcus?
Happy to go first. Honourable mentions to Scotty Pendlebury and Josh Dacos for reasons outlined earlier. I've gone one vote with Shooter for really a very similar game to last week. 17 disposals, 17 tackles again. Hits the scoreboard with 2 this week. That was the only difference for mine. Great performance from him. 2 votes to Steele for turning back the clock, and 3 votes to Nick. Your votes, thanks, Lukey.
I'll go 1 for Shooter, another great game from him. 2 for Whisper, getting back to his best, and the 3 votes. Going to celebrate Steelo, particularly his last quarter and the match winner.
Very good. Dacos very stiff to get 1 here, but I'm going to give it to him. 2 to Sidebottom for his last quarter in particular, and I think 3 for Lockie Schulz for setting the tone of the game a little bit with his excellent pressure and the role that he played throughout the game. Our fan votes were very similar. Sidebottom, Schulz and Dacos really occupying those top 3 spots. Not too many more there. Pendlebury got a bit of love, as did Darcy Cameron, who I still thought was very serviceable against Tim English throughout the night, but all pretty stock standard around there as well. All right, let's get to AskPiesNation. So be sure you do keep in touch with us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, TikTok. This one is about those 2 milestone men, Lukey and Pendles and Steele, and the fact that they are just continuing to have such an amazing influence on this side, week in, week out, despite being in the twilight of their careers.
Absolutely. And I'll start with Justin Carringbush. Now, this touches on that moment in the last quarter where Steele, I guess, might have backed out a little, flinched. And I really like this analysis of it. And he could be wrong. He could be completely wrong, but it does make me feel more positive about the moment. Position for impact, understanding game structures, not speed. Sidey, so-called drop in the middle. Late misreading. He read the defender would overcommit, leaving him on goal. It's smarts to go and win the game and not save it. So I think he's saying Sidey's kind of stopped and propped, almost hoping the ball would go over the top. The defender has overcommitted, missed the footy. Sidey's able to run out the back, and we're able to get a goal from that. Now, that could be completely wrong, but at least there is a bit in that to say that Sidey didn't quite just flinch and, shit himself to an extent, but it is a little bit of an analysis on that moment.
Yeah, I think there's an argument that he could have been decisive for sure. I mean, in the heat of the moment, who knows?
And it'd be good to hear what people think on that because I was quite disappointed at the time. And when he kicked the match win, I was like, thank God he's done that because he basically cost us the game a few minutes earlier.
Bit harsh.
And touching on us going for it, like that kick from Howe to Sidey at that point in the game was a very daring and risky kick at that point in the game, and it just shows that we are always trying to win it instead of being a bit more safer and all right, let's just go down the line here and find one. No, we're going to go through the middle to three dogs converging on Steele, and go on and lose the game because we've stuffed that up. But we get on and win. Matt Exempelor, Sidey just constantly defies the critics, busts his gut in the crucial moments when we really need it. Same with Pendles. He does have his errors, but in precarious situations, he finds one defining moment that plays a part.
The fine wines. I'm going to start calling them.
Yeah,
very good.
Oh, they just put some wine.
Release another wine.
Yeah.
So
They did. They
did. Yeah.
308. I think. Penny Pies leading by experience. The energy was magic to watch. Our man, the Surge. They are still competitive beasts.
Yes, they certainly are.
They always.
It's great to see that, particularly after the 23 flag, because it would have been very easy for them to just go through the sunset.
Hunger is there to win another. Yeah, it's great. Wallet fam, they double up as on-field coaches, high footy IQ skill-wise and tactics-wise.
Absolutely, they do.
Nick Opasinus, you can't buy experience. These two have basically seen it all on the footy field in their careers. Their footy IQ is through the roof, and the way they impact that on their fellow teammates on the field is invaluable. Couple that with still being able to have some influence on the games due to their skill and poise is something we cannot underestimate.
Yeah, it's just lovely hearing these sentiments, to be honest, because the fact that they're still churning out these performances this late in their career, it's not to be sneezed at. Like, seriously, we've had finals that they've performed well into their 30s, but I really feel like there's some energy that wants to be expended this season going deep into a finals campaign, and wins like this early in the year are just such good validation that they've still got the capacity to lead those really tight wins. So, thrilled.
Ben White, 91, it's a multitude of things. It's their leadership on and off the field. They're always cool, calm and composed. And when the going gets tough, you'll find them at the coalface doing everything to get us over the line. John Caxos, while everyone says you need speed to get up and down the ground, when the contest gets tight, you need calm, experienced heads who hold their nerve and execute without error. There might be faster players around, but they possess the finest footy IQ in the game. And their skills on both sides of their body have not diminished at all. Ultimate professional. As the season wears on to the colder months, their influence will increase as the young players drop off the pace.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. That is a fantastic perspective, I think, as well. By the way, Steele is 16 games away from 350. Do we see that this year?
For sure.
Yeah. Which
no
round
reason
would that
why
be
not
at this stage?
Well, 16, my maths could be around 21 clash.
Home
Not
game.
too sure. I'll have a quick look.
He got stooged, I think, with his 300th at Marvel. Would have been nice to have.
Well, he did get injured in the first 5 minutes, by the way.
And that is
The bruise?
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. That was a premiership year.
I'll finish with Lucas Beach. Seeing games where they've not really been influential and just wondered if they faded too much. And then they pop up and play like that just to remind everyone that there's possibly one more flag in them.
And how good to see Fly put both of them in the guts for the first centre bounce of the game. Really rung true for me. And I think in the final series, particularly the granny, they were there and they're still there, because they've still got the quality.
So as it stands, if he plays every game from here, game 350 will be against Richmond at the MCG. So
that'll be
not too bad.
That'll
Playing
be
the
big.
kids.
Yeah.
Is that a home game?
It's not our home game, but it is against Richmond at the G. So who knows by then?
They'll be 18th by then. So.
That will be to get us 4 games clear on top, won't it, Luke? All right. Well, that was AskPiesNation. Thanks to everyone that gets involved: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. TikTok is where you can find us, so be sure to continue to do so. All right, let's swing across to some of our favourite segments, of course, starting with our Guess the Margin. It was 6 points in the end. Nobody. Wow.
No one. No,
So
most people were pretty confident this week. It was kind of, not a close game. So one had 7, but 7's not close enough.
So we're yet to get a winner after 2 wins. Very interesting. But we do have a Guess the Crowd competition winner this week, and we will speak to him very shortly. It's Paul. Do you have an idea of how far he might have
It
been?
was 27 off. So it was, I think, 78-27, and he just went straight out 78,000. So
How good was it to see such a big crowd?
it was much bigger
There
than
with
I
that-
expected. I
the
thought
Dogs,
we'd
nearly
get
80,000.
60, 65. So
Super impressive. Absolutely. All right, let's get these on. Let's hope that there are no technical issues, and at least Marcus gets to speak to our Guess the Crowd winner this week.
Can you hear me, Nick?
Yeah, well, I can, but we'll see if Paul can. So we're about to get him. He's our 3rd person that has won the Guess the Crowd. So let's give Paul a call and let's have a chat about our favourite topic, the pies.
Go Pies Nation.
There we go. Paul's on the
Hey.
board already. Very good to hear. How you going, mate? Welcome to the Pies Nation podcast.
Thanks very much, mate. Thanks very much. Yeah, it's a real privilege and honour to be here.
All right, we're very happy to have you here, and it's because you guessed the crowd closest to the pin. You must have known that the Dogs were going to turn up for the only time this year. How was your method about getting the crowd?
Look, in full disclosure, in all honesty, it was a complete and utter jag. It was. Look, I kind of cheat a little bit in that I go and have a look at what the other Pies Nation podcasters are tipping, and I pick something around there. But I usually try and pick something that's fairly specific, like 65,223. So on this occasion, I just got lazy. So and then I just happened to just to pick a definitive number, 78,000, and it was just a complete and utter jag.
There you go. So that's the lesson for everybody listening and watching. Just don't bother trying at all. Just put in a bunch of random numbers and you might get there. Now, Paul, were you one of those that attended the G on Friday night? And regardless, how did you see our 6-point win over the Dogs?
Look, no, I'm up in the Gold Coast, so I watched it on TV. So, but look, I love the game. Look, the game took me back 2 years ago to our heart-stopping thrillers of close games. So, look, love the game, love the outcome. How could you not be happy with that outcome? Look, mate. I tipped the Pies to win by 65 points.
Okay.
So look, that tells you how close I was to picking the result.
Paul, Marcus here. Thank you for joining us. Just wanted to touch on the game in a bit more detail. We obviously got jumped and then we were able to work our way back into the contest. What sort of performance was this for you in terms of the maturity of the group? Because we have seen Collingwood performances where we've left it to 5 goals at 3/4 time and then we turn on the Jets and somehow chase down the opposition. But this was a different type of win. We actually had ascendancy in the second half. So were you impressed with the maturity of the side to go on and get the job done?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, great question. Look, I was. It was hard to not be impressed with, the Bulldogs. They looked so strong. They looked, gosh, in the first quarter, I thought we're in for a real fight here, and the boys just fought and they fought, and they hung in there, and it could have gone the other way, but geez, they played well and they stood up. Pendles and Steele, geez, didn't they make?
Yep.
Didn't they stand out?
absolutely, Paul. It's Luke here. Great to have you on. Congratulations. Now, you said you lived on the Gold Coast. Have you lived there your whole life? And I guess in terms of getting to Collingwood games, do you get to a few of the Gold Coast ones, or do you travel to
I've
Melbourne
only
as
lived
well?
here for about just under 10 years. So any of the Lions games or the Suns games, I'll definitely try and get to them. I'm not far from the Sun Stadium, so
Yep.
and obviously for their their preseason games, so I have the privilege of watching the boys train then.
Yep. No, awesome. Have you got a favourite, I guess, game that you've been to over there?
Oh gosh, look, any game to see the Pies, from being an interstater, gosh, they're all fantastic. Just to see the Collingwood supporters come up from down south as well is just fantastic. Like when they're playing the Suns, they will there will literally be more Collingwood supporters than there are Gold Coast Suns in a Suns home game. It's something to watch.
Yeah, I made the trip last year for the Collingwood Gold Coast game, and it was actually even though we lost, it was such a fun, I guess, afternoon, twilight, evening at the footy, just because it felt like there were just Collingwood supporters everywhere, and we're just all having a bit of fun and a laugh, and it felt like a bit less serious than going to the footy in Melbourne. So I really enjoyed it, and I want to try and make it a regular thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, look, but before you go on, can I just say, look, I listen to a number of sporting podcasts, American NBA and American NFL, and your guys' podcast, it is really world class. It is second to none, and your content, your structure, your insights, it's really fantastic. I can't say enough, fellas. It's a fantastic product that you've got, and it's great to listen to each week.
Paul, that is absolutely fantastic to hear. That means so much to us, obviously. Coming in as a bunch of nuffy Collingwood supporters
Yes.
however many years ago, and now people actually listen to us on a weekly basis from all around the world as well. So really the question to come out of that is, can Lukey stay at your house when we play the Suns?
I might have a spare room, might have a spare bed. Yeah, we could probably, just hook me up on the socials, and we'll see what we can do.
Because they do jack the prices up when Collingwood come to town, so I might need that accommodation.
All right, we might see what we can do. Now, Paul, we've been fantastic to have you as part of our episode today. Before we do let you go, we are now approaching the bye, a well-deserved bye after a very hard 3 weeks to start the season. But what's your take on how you think the rest of the 2025 will go? Obviously, we've seen the best and the worst of Collingwood in that short span of time. What are your confidence levels about how far we can go in 2025?
Yeah, look, another great question. After the first round, I was like, gosh, this could be another long season. But after our second game, it was like, wow, we could have something really special here. I'm really looking forward to our game against Carlton, because I think that'll be a real show of where we are as a club. Because the Blues always get up against us. So I think as many Pie supporters, we're quietly very confident, of a top 8, top 4 finish, and I definitely am, and I think our game against the Blues is really gonna answer some questions as to where we are. And I'm going to stick with my 65-point tip. I'll stick with that because I'll see if I can get it right this time.
Well, I'll tell you what that game will show us. It'll tell us whether they're going to sack Voss this week or next. But regardless, I'll be very excited to see how we go against the Blues. Paul, it's been amazing to have you on this episode of the AskPiesNation podcast. Thanks for your support, not just for today, but throughout. And hopefully we get to see you at a few Pies games up north.
Thanks very much, mate.
All right. Thank you, mate. Take it easy.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
That was Paul joining us as part of our Guess the Crowd competition. That could be you if you guess closer to the pin, so keep an eye out for Luke's game day posts in the lead up to each match. Give it your best shot. And if you are closer to the correct crowd, then that will be you joining us on the AskPiesNation podcast. Very kind words there from Paul.
Now accepting verbal reviews of the AskPiesNation podcast. No, that was very lovely to hear, and we do appreciate all the support, all the messages that come through. Lukey mans the Instagram page very well and shares them with us. So appreciate all the positive feedback.
Yeah, every, little bit of feedback is welcome, even if it's, bad feedback. Constructive criticism, we'll take it on board. But good to hear that people, enjoy this on a weekly basis, and kind of if we ever are missing or particularly obviously the off-season, we've been pretty good through the regular season, but in the off-season we obviously get a lot of messages. When are you back? So it's good that it's part of, a lot of people's weekly routines now as Collingwood supporters.
Well, the only criticism I've seen from us so far is how bad you guys have been doing in the games. In each
we need to lift. So, a bit like Carlton.
We copped it a bit last week after.
Yeah, we did.
We really look like absolute shocking Collingwood supporters.
You have a chance to redeem yourself soon, but before we do, we need to chat VFL because that returned on the weekend, and it started with a nice win over the Sydney Swans at our spiritual home in Victoria Park, of course, 13-6-84, defeating the Swans 8-11-59. Marcus, as always, you can get us underway before we get to our main man, Serge.
Thank you, Nico. And I did have a chance to tune in online, as we were saying. For anyone who doesn't know, the AFL app does now have all VFL matches streaming live, so you can get your footy fix even if you can't make it to the ground, which is great. But yes, fantastic to see our new recruits all donning the black and white for the first time, Nico, and a couple of names I'm sure the Surge will mention that debuted, which were very impressive as well. So without further ado, for the first time this year,
he's back. The VFL season opener played at our spiritual ground, Victoria Park. The Pies had 14 AFL players and 9 debutants today. Both teams had poor seasons last year. Pies, of course, finishing 20th. Yeah, we don't like to talk about that too much. An early arm wrestle, the Pies led at every change by small margins due to their efficient kicking for goal. The first half was marred as a spectacle due to poor skills and multiple turnovers. Both sides had repeated inside 50s and both wasted opportunities. The Pies bombed the ball forward, leaving Sydney defenders to intercept the ball instead of lowering their eyes and kicking to targets. But Sydney were wasteful forward as well, which allowed the likes of Ryan, Frampton, Hoskin Elliott and Dean to intercept and prevent the Swans from scoring. It was interesting to see both sides apply a similar game plan, utilising the corridor with quick handball chains to break the game open, with the Pies eventually gaining some success in that department in the second half. The skill level improved after half-time and the game opened up with goals coming regularly. Pies led by 19 going into the final term off the back of some excellent defensive work and some great goal kicking. The Pies' general play and delivery to our forwards allowed them to kick 6 goals against Sydney's 3 in the last quarter. Our small brigade of the Marnie brothers, Tovey, Brown and Hayes getting more of the ball as well. Collingwood closed the game down with excellent tackle pressure and controlled the aerial contests around the ground. Sullivan, Steen, Smith and Edwards provided the necessary momentum in the middle to send the Pies forward, repeatedly with the Marnie brothers dominating up forward, all converting to kick another 4 goals. In defence, Frampton was the pick of our defensive unit and was ably assisted by Ryan, Parker and Dean. Overall, a good performance which saw Collingwood run out winners by 25 points and secure our first win for season 2025.
boys,
Unreal.
Let's go.
well done, the Surge.
Unreal.
That's an absolutely phenomenal start. Yes, 84-59, we won. Look, to be honest, it's a really similar. It's probably what should have happened in the ones, because we went on to kick 13 goals 6 in this game after a tussle at half time, but managed to free the game up. Ed Allen he's not a VFL player. That was what I learnt from watching this game of footy. Coming back, your man after round 1, Nico,
Yes.
he should be playing AFL football, no question about
So
that.
does he get in front of Frampton next week with Reef McInnes out of the equation?
Well, this is, of course, going to bring up the new challenge of who comes in as that extra defender. I think structurally, I prefer us to play Frampton ahead of Dean.
Yep.
But Charlie Dean, as I was alluding to earlier in the ep, I reckon there was that little bit of extra motivation knowing that, unfortunately, one of their teammates had gone down to try and get a selection against the Blues. So a great start to the year for the 1s and the 2s.
Yep, and what about our draftees as well? They all seem to have a bit of the ball and were able to get their first taste of VFL action in black and white, which was very impressive.
Yeah, exactly. Charlie West looks a likely type, a bit of your crash and bash tall forward, 194 centimetres, kicked the 2 goals. Will Hayes, who seemed to impress during the pre-season, was also handy between the arcs with 15 disposals, and Joel Cochran, the key defender, coming through with 14 disposals as well, Nico. So great start at the home of the Collingwood Footy Club, Vic Park.
Very good. Next week?
Next week we've got a bye, I believe.
Oh, that's great. After one game, we're already on to the bye.
Yeah.
That's typical VFL style, isn't it? That we're already straight into the season.
And a rest.
Can't wait. And then bang, we cop a bye. Yes, you are right, Marcus. We do have a bye next week. So awesome. Really
At least
great.
it times up with the AFL. But
I know, but let's be honest
Makes
here.
no sense.
Why not just start the season a bit later?
I was just looking for, would have been nice if we had a double header with the VFL Blues and then the ones, but no, we'll save our fixture for next week, Nico. So
Absolutely.
1-0.
Great start to the VFL reports for season 2025, I think. Okay, I mentioned game. It's how we always end our episodes this year, and that's how I'll continue. But I'm giving you both a choice this time because you both embarrassed yourselves last week by not getting any right with our rankings of career high disposal counts. So, would you like another game where I give you the plays first and you rank them in the correct order? Or would you like a blind ranking, which we've done throughout the first fortnight of the episode of the season?
Have you done a blind ranking yet? Lock it in, Eddie.
I'm getting nervous.
All right, blind ranking. Let's go.
This is what we're here for, to
Okay.
make fools of
This
ourselves.
is where my brain just
All
goes
this-
to mush.
Commentary on how the game is gone, and then we just get it all wrong at trivia time.
This is your chance now.
This is what we do.
This is your rectifier. Okay, so I want you both to blindly rank these Collingwood ruck duos.
Ooh,
Okay. Ruck
duos.
duos.
Yeah.
So just think about how that might look.
Very good from you, Nick. Rucks had been in discussion over the last week, and here you are with another relevant topic. Quizmaster.
That's why I keep the show running. Okay, so yeah.
Literally.
All right. So, your first duo is Mason Cox and Darcy Cameron.
Is there 5 duos?
Yes.
Okay. Mason Cox and Darcy Cameron.
Premiership duo.
I was going to say premiership duo, so that's hard to beat.
We've got, in our recent living memory, there's another ruck duo, Jolly and Leroy Brown. Yeah. I feel like we've got to get them on the table first because this is probably the mistake. Are we allowed to do this?
No, that's what the blind ranking's about.
So we just got to
You have to name it before I give you the next
And-
one.
It's not about who our favourites are. It's about who
Yeah.
the best have been.
Roughly.
Best
Yes.
duo.
Yeah.
Best duo.
I'm going to say,
It's got to be up there.
what's the year? Is it ever?
Oh, in the last 30 years,
Okay.
I'd say.
Last 30?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's going to be 2 or 3 for me.
I'm going to go 2.
All right, 2, just because the
How many others
premiership.
run flags? Yeah.
Your next duo, Josh Fraser and Steve McKee.
Not a lot of success there.
That was the 2002 Grand Final ruck duo.
Oh,
Yeah, okay. Again, they win that and it's a different ranking, but 4.
4.
Given Fraser's pick 1.
Okay. Next is Brodie Grundy and Jared Witts.
See, they're like, I loved when we had both of them going around. That was like just an OG time as
So
a
no,
supporter.
no like success at the highest level, but based on the types of players that they were together, that was a dark period for
It
us,
was, but
really.
it kind of was just having them together. Looking back, was like, how good did we have it when we had them both?
5 or 3.
Yeah, it's 3, but I think it's probably going to end up. Probably should it be 5?
All right, 5 it is.
All right.
5, okay.
We got that one wrong.
Next is Cameron Wood and Chris Bryan.
They might have been 5.
3. Were those two our 2 ruckmen for some period?
07 prelim.
Oh my God, Cameron Wood. That's dire straits, isn't it, for ruck socks?
AFL.
That's pretty bad, eh?
AFL
Chris
Live.
Bryan. I didn't mind Chris
2007.
Bryan here and
No,
there.
he was a Carlton flogger.
He put that jumper on. Dirty.
All right. Your number 1, I think you've nailed. Darren Jolly and Lee Brown.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
On balance,
Yeah.
I'd bet close second, Cameron and
Yeah.
Coxie.
I reckon we nailed top 2. Obviously, it was probably.
If you had have picked
The
Grundy
3
and
and
Witts
5.
for 3, that's a perfect ranking in my eyes.
Yeah, not far off. Good question. Really like that from you, Nico.
Oh, very good. Okay. Well, that will end our episode for today. We will have a Thursday episode, so keep an eye out for that. But otherwise, we'll be back next week ahead of the big Carlton Collingwood
Oh,
Thursday night encounter.
Could we end their season next week?
Oh, we
Nico?
will be.
Melbourne might hit fever pitch if they lose against the Dogs. I tell you what,
Jeez.
that could be one of the
there's no
biggest
re-
wind-ups to a game in a long time.
There's no reason why the Dogs can't beat them after what
If
we
they
saw on
play
Friday.
anything like they did against us,
Yep.
there's no way Carlton handle that.
And they don't need big ins to do that job. They just need...
I think
hard.
Liam Jones is the only one expected to be back for them anyway this week, so will be fascinating. But
Was that Thursday or
there's Friday nights.
Friday night.
Friday nights.
They'd like it if they had Owies back, wouldn't they?
Anyway, Marcus, Luke, thanks boys for joining me.
Always good.
Thanks,
Fantastic
Nico.
time.
Thanks, Marcus.
Till next week, I've been Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening or watching the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold.